Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome along. We're not in the wilds of Suffolk today. As you can see, I'm in space, and there's a very good reason I'm in space with my background here. And we are interviewing again Michael Jeunesse, a NASA veteran engineer who was with NASA for a very long time, who's back working with them again for the new missions to the moon that are happening in 2030 or up to 2030. Is that right, Michael?
Yeah, somewhere in there. Due to the vagaries of NASA budget, you never really know for sure, but it'll be in that neighborhood. Hopefully sooner than that.
Excellent. So welcome back, Michael. Thank you so much for joining us again. I'm really pleased that you're here to talk about, wait for it, everybody, a NASA engineer. We're going to talk about aliens and the likelihood of aliens being with us. So, Michael, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Well, it's my pleasure, Chris, as always. Looking forward to the topic. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. You know, just to give everyone a little bit of a background into how this came about. I've done talks before on my YouTube channel, and Michael and I started talking, and because Michael's been working with NASA and been working in the space field for a long, long time. So he got in touch with me and said, well, look, if you really want to know about aliens, I've got a bit of a slideshow. So this is where it started, and we've been conversing ever since. And yeah, this is his third appearance here, so I'm so happy Michael's with us. And today we're going to go through what he's got and some other stuff that I've put together. So we're going to mesh the whole idea of the concept of the numbers working of the likelihood of aliens being with us, and the sort of more my area of expertise, which is the conspiratorial side. So I think this is going to meld together quite well. And when we get to the end of this, hopefully everyone will understand how I think and why I think the way that I do. And hopefully you get it. No, you like it. If you don't, well, sorry. So let's get started. I'll do a screen share. We're going to get started with this one here, which is the PowerPoint. And I'll get you to walk us through as we go on this, Michael, if that's okay.
Yes, indeedy. So yeah, is it in slideshow mode?
It is indeed.
All right, there we go. Okay, so I think to advance, you have to click slides. So yeah, you can just, we'll just go through it and see how we do. So anyway, this is actually a presentation that I gave to Civic Group. I do some public speaking from time to time, and of course, aliens are a universally interesting topic to most people. So I put this together and I titled it, "Is There Alien Life Out There?" And I said, count on it. Count on it. So let's go to the next slide.
Perfect.
It probably takes a little while for the visuals to show up across the Atlantic Ocean. Yeah. So, you know, I basically have two arguments that I'm going to present as part of this presentation. Arguments in favor of extraterrestrials being real, and of the probability of us eventually making first contact if we haven't already. You know, that's worth discussing. And one is just a sheer probability argument, which we'll go into. And then the other is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence argument, or SETI argument.
Right.
So in this little cartoon there is kind of funny, you know, but the real aliens, look at how we depict them, and it's like, yeah, they screwed it up, not even close. So go ahead, next slide.
Well, I think you know, there's lots of talk of different alien races actually being here or having visited here before, but we'll get to that after. So let's stick with the subject so far. Here we go, the probability argument.
Right. Okay, so I don't know how many of you have ever heard of this, but I'm sure everybody knows about the Hubble Space Telescope. And one of the more fascinating experiments they did with the Hubble Space Telescope was they found a patch of sky that, through all the other telescopes and through the naked eye, of course, but even through other telescopes, looked absolutely empty. I mean, it was actually a very tiny, it was like if you took a dime or a penny, whatever it was, and you put it at arm's length, and you put it up against the sky, they stared at a spot that was the same amount of space that dime would have taken in the sky, which is a tiny, tiny, tiny little percentage of the overall sky that you could look at. And they found that little spot that was absolutely pitch black, nothing there. And they pointed the Hubble Space Telescope at that little tiny spot, and they stared at it for a very long period of time. They collected light from that apparently dark spot for a very, very long time, and it slowly accumulated on the image plate of the telescope and downloaded the data. And they found in that pitch black spot where there was apparently nothing, they discovered that it was actually populated with 10,000, approximate 10,000 new galaxies nobody had ever seen before.
Wow.
And just to be clear, I'm not talking about stars. They look like stars, maybe, all these little colorful stars. Those are actually galaxies. They are massive collections of stars, which is, of course, what a galaxy is. So anyway, they did that, and then you go ahead and click forward.
This is done on a long exposure, is it?
Yeah, very, very long exposure.
Right. Okay. So that's why you see the light is for those who don't do photography. I've never done photography. Do you want to just explain how that works with the long exposure?
Yep. Yeah. The longer you stare at something, if you have something that is a very, very faint light source and you just snap a picture 1/100th of a second or whatever, you're not going to see it. But if you keep your lens, your aperture open long enough and you stare at a very, very faint source of light, it will make an impression on the film or your digital collector or whatever you're using to capture the image. It'll eventually make an impression on it as more and more photons hit your sensing surface.
Right.
And that's what they did here, and they found 10,000 galaxies way out there in this apparently empty portion of space.
Amazing.
So they had so much fun doing it in 2004. They decided they would do it again in 2012, and they stared at that exact same point in space again. And because they had, I don't know if it was because this was after one of the upgrades they'd made to the telescope, or whether it was they just stared at it longer. I don't know what, I don't remember what it was. They looked at it again. They called it the Hubble Extreme Deep Field experiment, and they ended up spotting an additional 5,500 galaxies on top of the 10,000. So in a tiny little dime-sized area of apparently dark space, if you look at it long enough with the right instruments, they were able to find 15,500 galaxies they didn't know existed before.
Right.
So, so let's go on to the next one, and we'll expand on this, these impressive numbers a little bit. So, okay, remember, those are all galaxies. Now, in our galaxy, our one little island of stars, there are approximately 400 billion individual stars, individual suns, if you will, in our galaxy. Now, and our galaxy is not a particularly gigantic galaxy. It's a, fair to midland sized galaxy, but there are other galaxies out there, and a significant number of them, that are immensely bigger, up to 100 trillion stars in one galaxy. So, there are, if you look at the number of galaxies there are in the universe, and you look at these numbers of stars, well, click to the next one. And, we're starting to get into some pretty big numbers. Now, they've assumed, or they've estimated that there are approximately 170 billion galaxies in the observable universe that we've found so far. And that number, as the Hubble Deep Field shows, that number is only going to go up the more sensitive our instruments become, and the farther back in space-time we can look.
Right.
But, 170 billion galaxies in the universe. Let's go to the next one.
Yep. All right. There we are.
And if you just do some simple math, and by the way, when I came up with this, I biased it to the low side. I think, I don't remember exactly what I did, but I have multiplied, if you multiply 400 billion by 170 billion, or somewhere in there, you get something on the order of 1 septillion stars, approximately, in the observable universe. Now, no. If I tell you there's a dozen eggs, you can wrap your brain around what 12 is. Or even if I go to 100, I say, hey, it's $100. You can wrap your brain. But if you start talking about numbers like this, we can't even conceive of how many that is. You can say clever things like, oh, like the grains of sand on the beach or something, and it gives you an idea. This is an absurdly, inconceivably large number of stars.
Yeah.
Okay, so just hold that thought for a minute and go on to the next slide. So, you know, if only one star in a billion stars, or 0.0000001% of all those stars had a planet capable of supporting life, that would mean there are a quadrillion possible life-bearing planets in the universe. Even if you apply that minuscule little percentage to all those stars, you get an enormous, another inconceivably large number of possible life-bearing planets in the universe.
Yeah.
Okay, click forward again, and you're going to get the but. One more time. But, you know, that 0.00001% was grotesquely over-conservative. Yeah. In our galaxy alone, we've launched several different kinds of space telescopes in the last 10 or 15 years, and I'll talk about them in a bit. But their job has been specifically to search for planets around other stars. And so, for example, the Kepler Space Telescope, it did a search for planets around other stars, you know, in the immediate vicinity of our galaxy, you know, in the immediate vicinity of our solar system, within our galaxy. And they found that actually 14 to 30%, not 0.0000001, but 14 to 30% have potentially life-friendly planets, and up to 8% have really life-friendly planets. So if you just do that, the 4% times the number of stars in our galaxy, you get 16 billion stars in our galaxy alone that research indicates probably have really life-friendly planets. So that thought for a minute. Let's go on to the next slide.
So before we go into the next slide, I know we've got a slide coming up that explains the Kepler Space Telescope, but isn't Kepler something to do with sound? The Kepler effect, the sound or color shift of something, red and blue color shift?
Yeah, no, you're talking about the red shift, the Doppler effect. That was the one you get. Yeah, that's the whole train horn gets lower in high frequency as it goes by. Kepler was he was an early astronomer back in the, I don't know, several hundred years ago. I don't remember exactly when he lived, but it was named in his honor. Right.
So the blue and red shift is the Doppler effect, is it? And the Kepler, I'm getting confused. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes, okay. Doppler. Okay. Doppler effect. So, you know, so with 16 billion really life-friendly planets in our galaxy, what do you think the odds are that some of them have intelligent life on them? So there's it's obvious that just running the numbers, you would think the probabilities are in favor of, at least 10 other planets with intelligent life on them. So click again. And I'm not the only one who's come to that. That's a pretty obvious conclusion. And, Neil Armstrong, everybody knows who Neil Armstrong was, I hope, first man on the moon. And, he made the point, yeah, it's probably, given the number of stars there are, it's easy to extrapolate that other life probably exists out there and maybe in many places. And if Neil Armstrong isn't credible enough for you, then click again. And this is one of your own folks out there in the UK.
Yeah.
Stephen Hawking said, hey, to my mathematical brain, the numbers alone make thinking about aliens perfectly rational. It's not some crazy thing to think about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, absolutely. So anyway, next slide.
In the conspiracy theorist community, there is an argument that says that when NASA went to the moon in '72, that they actually encountered aliens there, and that's why they never went back.
Well, I met Gene Cernan, who was the last astronaut on the surface of the moon in 1972.
Yep.
That was December 1972, Apollo 17. And I read his book, I saw his movie, and I've actually met him in real life, and he never said a thing about it. So I doubt that there are aliens out there. It was the moon was a pretty empty place.
Yeah. Well, if it did happen, we don't know nothing about it.
Well, yeah, exactly. Right. He could have encountered Marie Antoinette out there for all you know. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So let's expand on, if we've concluded that up to 16 billion stars in our galaxy alone could have really life-friendly planets. Well, what does really life-friendly mean? Well, it means that they've discovered a planet that is in they call it the Goldilocks zone.
Right.
And if you click again, I think that will come up as another message, and there's planets that are too close to their sun, and they're just too hot, and there are planets that are too far from their sun, and they're all just way too cold. But then there are planets in that middle zone between too hot and too cold, just right, and they call that the Goldilocks zone.
Right.
And not only that, but to qualify as a really life-friendly planet, you have to have a planet size that isn't grotesquely large, such that the gravity would be crushing to most things. But,
right.
They're looking at planet size of roughly Earth size to 2 times Earth size.
Right.
So that's what really life-friendly means.
Right. Yep. Okay.
Okay, so this is just an image of this is the telescope that really, made the initial headlines of, holy cow, there really are other planets out there. And that was launched in 2009, and its purpose was to scan a small patch of the sky for planets that were up to only 3,000 light years away, which is, that's a pretty good distance, but not given the scope of space. And as of April of 2018, it had found almost 4,600 planets orbiting distant stars. And its mission ran out about 4 years ago, or 3.5 years ago, or whatever. Yep. And its fuel ran out. It could no longer maintain position. But in its life, it found almost, over 4,000 planets in just its first tries. We can go to the next slide.
Yep.
And then the subsequent telescope is called TESS,
right,
or Transitioning Exoplanet Survey Satellite. Now, just so you know, the way they discover planets is when a planet orbits its sun, as it passes between its sun and us, where we're looking at it, the dot goes across the sun, and it reduces the light coming from that star by a tiny, tiny, tiny amount.
Right.
And it's by measuring those small reductions in light from that star as the planet transits across the sun that they discover these planets. And they can actually infer quite a bit from the data they collect during that transition. So TESS, it was launched in April of 2018, and they got it all powered up and positioned and ready to go by August of that year. And it's designed to locate specifically Earth-like planets that are within 300 light years of us. And it's going to survey 85% of the sky during its 2-year primary mission. And astronomers estimate it's going to find at least 500 Earth-like planets. And if you click forward, I think I have a status of how many it's discovered thus far.
Okay, so before we go there, so we're talking about light years here, right? So in our current understanding of physics and quantum physics, well, physics actually, in our current understanding of physics, nothing can travel faster than the speed of light because it would take an infinite amount of power to do it, right? So if we're talking about something 300 light years away, it's impossible for us to get there with our current understanding of physics, that we couldn't do it traveling because it would take us 300 light years, and it would take an infinite amount of power to travel anywhere near the speed of light. But we're going to get to how it's possible to travel from point A to point B 300 light years without actually having to travel anywhere in after. So
good.
Yep. Okay.
So as of last November, this past November, 2.5 months ago,
Yep.
it already had found 171 confirmed planets, and it had over 3,000 candidate planets identified. It was going to study some more. So even in a relatively short period of time, again, we're adding thousands of candidate planets that are, and remember now, this is designed to be specifically Earth-friendly planet finding.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of planets out there that could support life.
For sure.
And
this is just in our solar system, you said, is it? Or in our galaxy? Galaxy.
Just in our galaxy, right? It's all relatively nearby.
Wow.
By space standards.
Yeah.
So this is just, an example. If you're wondering, you can say they've discovered X number of planets. Well, this is these are the actual planets they've actually discovered. They know the size, they know a little bit about what the planet is likely made of. They know whether it's rocky or gaseous and all those kind of things. They know basically about the amount of mass each one has, and they've named them all. So it's not like they just threw a number out there. These actually have they specifically have found them, just like we have specific names for stars. Well, now we're getting good enough that we can discover planets, and specific planets are identified, and we can go back and study them more as we get better and better instruments.
Right.
And someday, when we do travel in the stars,
yeah.
Assuming that day comes, we've already done the homework about, well, what's the best place to go for starters?
For sure.
And so this is the beginning of building that database.
Great. All right.
And some of the solar systems are richer than others. They discovered this one solar system that had 7 planets in it. Now, it's one thing to look at a star and find a planet or two. This system, they found 7 planets. And if you'll go forward, you'll see that 3 of those planets are actually in the Goldilocks zone. So this was really, pay dirt here. I mean, to find a solar system with 3 planets that could actually support life. It reminds me of one of those science fiction movies where there's civilized life on 2 planets in a solar system, and they're at war with each other.
Yeah, like every Hollywood movie ever.
Exactly. It could actually happen in the TRAPPIST system.
Yeah.
And if you go forward one more slide, there's one planet in particular that's very interesting. I think the next slide shows it. This is going to give you more of an idea of the scale of the TRAPPIST system. It's actually very, very compact. If you looked at the bottom solar system is our solar system, at least out to Mars. It shows Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, and you can see it expands the TRAPPIST system in scale to our solar system. So you can see it's really close into its star. And you can ask yourself, well, why aren't all these planets little pieces of charcoal? They're so close. Well, it's because their star is a tiny little red dwarf. It doesn't put out nearly as much energy as our sun. It's probably close to the end of its life cycle. And that's why these other planets can be so close to that star, because it's just not pumping out the energy like ours is.
Right.
So that's what the TRAPPIST system looks like. So you can go to the next slide, and I think this is where I'm going to talk about the one particular planet in this system that has people excited. No, I'm going to talk about this first. Okay. Of course, I think most people who watched the news last month or the month before know that NASA had launched the James Webb Space Telescope successfully, and it has now recently achieved its position out at the Lagrange point 2, and it's basically 1 million miles away from Earth. It's parked there, and it is going to stare out at space. If you click, this is a whole step up above the Hubble telescope or any other telescope. It's 100 times more powerful than the Hubble Space Telescope is. And you know how the Hubble blew everybody's mind when it first started collecting data. Well, this is just going to blow people's mind even more. You should be able to see, when you look back out into space, you're not just looking out into distance, you're looking into time as well.
Yeah.
And, you know, so this thing is going to look back farther into space-time to near the beginning of the Big Bang, theoretically at least. And it'll be interesting to see what they can discover. But the resolution with this instrument is going to blow people's minds. So why don't we go to the next slide? And it was a miracle that this all deployed exactly right. It was one of the modern marvels for sure that we were successful at getting this telescope out there and ready to go. So, you know, it's 100 times more powerful than the Hubble, and certainly way more powerful than TESS or Kepler. And it's going to stare at this particular planet. It's what is it, TRAPPIST 3, 4? I can't see the number on the screen.
TRAPPIST 1, it says.
Yeah, well, it is the one planet that it looks like it's potentially very, very Earth-like.
Right.
And they're going to stare at this thing with the James Webb Space Telescope. It's meant to look way back in the infrared portion of the spectrum and look as far back in space-time as it can. But given that all these planets have been discovered, they're also going to use it to really take a close look at the most promising Earth-like planets to see if we can get better images of them and get a little bit better idea of the atmospheric chemistry. And there are certain chemicals that are in an atmosphere that give you clues that there is life, Earth-like life anyway, on that planet. And the James Webb Space Telescope will be able to discern a lot of that kind of data by looking at these planets. So we ought to have some much, much better data on how life-friendly some of these quote-unquote life-friendly planets actually are.
Right.
So fascinating times coming.
Yeah, well, I think we're living through fascinating times now.
Right. So anyway, just, you know, that ends the probability argument. So basically just summing up, there's an inconceivably large number of stars in the galaxy and in the universe. And we're discovering that every single one of those dudes has planets around them. And further, we're discovering that a lot of those planets are actually in the Goldilocks zone, look like rocky Earth-like planets with atmospheres that could theoretically support life. So, you know, there's no reason to believe that life has not evolved and that intelligent life has evolved on other planets in our galaxy, certainly in the universe. So that's the bottom line there. Yeah. Now, the next argument is called the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. And this is, you know, these other telescopes have been looking. Well, SETI is listening. Yeah. And they use radio astronomy to process all these signals that come to us in the radio range of the electromagnetic spectrum, listening for intelligent signals. Yeah. Right now, some alien out there is probably listening to I Love Lucy or something, you know, and we're listening for some radio show or whatever. So we're listening to see if anybody else has been broadcasting something intelligible. And the people that are kind of at the running the SETI Institute think that as they continue to listen and they improve their listening, that they figure, you know, within the next, by 2040, they think they'll be able to have listened to 1 million star systems. And they haven't heard anything yet, but it's early days. They've only listened to several thousand. But, you know, as you know from the numbers, it takes a while to find the one that actually has intelligent life that's broadcasting. And so by 2040, they should have listened to about 1 million star systems. So stay tuned. We'll see what they come up with.
Nice.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's always the chance that this could happen to prove that there is, in fact, alien life out there. And I can't cite a NASA source for that. We have to rely on Hollywood and maybe some fuzzy videos from the Department of Defense. But, you know, this could happen tomorrow. And I suppose, Chris, that when we get to your slides, you're going to talk to a less obvious extent. Maybe it already has happened. So let's go to the next slide.
There is a possibility that, something that The way I see it, I mean, if you well, actually we'll get to that. We'll carry on with this. We'll get to the other stuff after.
So for those of you that get all scared with the thought of an alien invasion, you know, disintegrating your dog and your girlfriend or whatever, you got to keep in mind interstellar distances are just mind-blowingly enormous. It's not just the number of stars and planets out there, but the distances between them are just, we can't conceive it. You know, we throw numbers like light years out there, you know, it's no big deal, right? But think about this. The speed of light is 186,282 miles per second. That's 671 miles per hour. And a light year, one stinking little light year, is the time it takes for light to travel at 671 million miles per hour for 1 year. It's that distance.
Yeah.
At that speed, it takes over 4 years just to get to the nearest star, Proxima Centauri.
Yeah.
And to get to the center of our galaxy at traveling at light speed, 28,350 years. So, you know, it's not like they can just get in the car and be here in 20 minutes unless they have something that we don't know about. So we can, next slide, push to the key, please.
Yeah, I think the only way we could do those kind of distances is go straight to ludicrous speed.
Yeah. So, you know, the bottom line is, you know, for you Star Trek fans out there, what that means is an Orion slave girl would have to travel for 1,400 years to get here. So,
I don't think she'd be looking so good when she got here.
if you're having a hard time finding a girlfriend and you were hoping these Orion slave girls would show up, you know, I'd cool your jets. Yeah, looking on the dating app.
We get a little bit to wait.
So let's go to the next slide, and I'm not sure what this next slide say. It's refreshing very slowly. So, you know, here's the bottom line, and I think a lot of people would say, hey, ET is probably out there, given everything I just shared with you, but they're probably not here because of these distances, unless, of course, they figured out faster than light travel. You all know Star Trek, Star Wars, you know, you get from Earth to the Dagobah system, you know, in a split second, no worries. And that would be great, but we don't have the physics. Not only do we not have the technology to talk about that, we don't even have the physics to talk about that, other than crazy theoretical stuff.
Theoretical.
So once Yeah. So click again, and I think one more asterisk comment I think I made, and those. Oh yeah, unless those military fighter jet videos actually do show ET tech at work or play, and you know, I think I know from what I know about the DoD's evidence that they've been willing to share, which is probably a tiny fraction of what's real.
Yeah.
Something unknown is happening out there, you know, and I don't believe it's Russia or China. I don't believe it's even the United States Department of Defense. I mean, if we had tech like that, we would be using it, you know. So, and I can guarantee you, you know, see, NASA, I guarantee you, we do not have that technology.
Yeah,
if we did, do you think we would be still launching people on those giant chemical rockets? You know, they're so inefficient. So,
well, we're definitely going to discuss that. Don't worry.
Absolutely.
That's part of the discussion.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, I think I've left you with the science of it all, and let's go to the cool stuff now, Chris. What do you have?
All right. So we're going to go forwards and backwards in time the way I'm going to do this, and there's a reason for it, so bear with me, because it does seem like it jumps around a little bit, but there is a reason for why we're going to do it the way we're going to do it. All right. And I put it together this way because at the end you'll understand. Okay, so bear with me. All right, so we're going to start here. Okay, now this is Roswell. Okay, so Roswell happened on June 26 in 1947. After World War II, there was a farmer, a rancher, who was out near Roswell, New Mexico, who found something on his land that he said was a crashed craft that he'd never seen before, of some material that he'd never seen before. So it was, you know, the media showed up and started to have a look at it. Now, this is apparently what he said was part of the wreckage. Now, that was revealed. So this was the military came along and took it all away and said no, it was actually a weather balloon. It was a spy balloon. They use high altitude helium balloons to use and had spy equipment on it. So they said it was just a secret thing, and it was a weather balloon or a spy balloon, right? But here's the problem I have. When you listen to the reports and you listen to the how it was described, it was a metal, a thin metal of an unknown origin that was impossible to tear or break. So this was the first reports of the metal that was on the ground that was recovered from the site. Now I said to my children, what do you see here? Why is that argument a problem? What would you see as the argument to the problem with the argument that it was a material that couldn't be ripped or broken? It's in pieces all over the place. Right, so I'm like, okay, it can't be ripped or broken. How is it in pieces? So yeah, the Roswell. I mean, everybody's heard of Roswell, New Mexico, and you know, there's so many arguments as to whether there was bodies recovered, or whether there was material that was recovered, or whether it was an alien spacecraft at all, or whether it was just a weather balloon or a spy balloon. And that was all recovered to Area 51, which is obviously Skunk Works, you know, one of those kind of sites where they develop technology. And there's a lot of sightings of UFO technology, let's say that the UFO technology around Roswell and Area 51. So we start there. So everybody's heard of Roswell. We've heard the stories. People have been there. The next image is, again, military people with some other tin foil that's supposed to represent what they found. Some very, very odd things happen in Roswell. People are still talking about it. People travel there to this day. We've had people that are supposedly work at Area 51 say that they've seen alien bodies from Roswell. I mean, it's one of those things that no one can confirm or deny, because you know, the military has, you know, they keep a very tight rein on anything that has to do with anything with any kind of technology, especially if it's a spy technology. So I think the chances of us finding out exactly what happened at Roswell are zero. But we're going to get to some other things later that will maybe come back to it. So Roswell, everyone knows about, right? One of the biggest things in the world. This is one of the other ones. It's a short video I'm going to play. This is in 1952. 1952, there was a bunch of lights and things flying over Washington, over the White House. So we're going to just have a look at this. So have you heard about this?
I did hear about it. I've never seen that video, but I have heard about this event.
Yeah, but the problem is with
I know almost nothing about it.
Yeah, the problem with a lot of these things, I mean, you know, there's people put out fakes, and this is the problem with this whole UFO UAP thing. The UAP being unidentified aerial phenomena is what they call it now in the military. The problem is that there's so much misinformation, disinformation, and just there's so much out there that muddies the waters for people that it just automatically turns people off. As soon as you start talking about UFOs or, you know, UAPs, people automatically go, "Oh, you're one of those." But there is compelling evidence that shows. But this is one of those videos that has been, you know, played with. There are other ones that and plenty of eyewitness testimony. But it was in 1952, there was a few sightings. One that happened in Boston as well, I think. Some very, very strange stuff. Around the 40s and 50s, that these sightings really, really started to kick off. And there's a reason for that, I think, and we're going to get back to that later. But then we go out to this one here. This is the Roswell of the Soviet Union. This is a Dalnozgorsk UFO crash. Happened in 1986 in Eastern Russia, Eastern Soviet Union, where there's much like the Roswell incident that happened in the US. Completely different craft from what they recovered a ball. There was approximately 3 meters, nearly perfectly symmetrical ball. They recovered that. Very strange. They said there's also reports that they recovered bodies, but that's unconfirmed as well. Of course, the same thing as Roswell. But that's the Russian one, and that was in 1986, in January 29, 1986, right? Then we're going to go back to this one here, which is Rendlesham Forest. Now, the Rendlesham Forest, where I live, Rendlesham Forest is in Suffolk. It's not far away from my house. We've been there. I'll be doing a video from there in the coming weeks. So I'll go you to this site, so you'll see this picture. So Rendlesham was a US Air Force base. Now, this happened in 1980, where there was a US Air Force base, and it was in December, near Christmas, I think, and a craft of some kind came to the gates of the US Air Force base and buzzed over the gates and stopped there and hovered. And the people who were working at the gate witnessed it. Now, the lieutenant colonel of the base, a guy called Charles Hall, was in charge of the base, and they followed these lights and this craft into the forest where it landed. And this is a representation of what they saw in the forest that day, that night. Okay, so that's the representation. It's been placed in the forest so people can go and see it. So that's the representation of what they say the craft or the thing looked like that came to the base, US Air Force base on English soil, and then landed in the forest. Now, they've tried to say it was a lighthouse and all these kind of things, but the written testimony of this lieutenant colonel, who's very well decorated in the US Air Force, is astounding. And it's not just him; there's a few other people that were actually working on the base at the time as well. So you've heard about Rendlesham, this one?
Oh yeah, I've read the detailed description of the experience by the people that were on the ground that day, and it's a very compelling story there. That's fascinating.
When you've got people who are in the military, I mean, these are people that are, anyone who knows anyone in the military, these people aren't the kind of people that are just going to make up stories. They have to think about their career, and their career in the military is based around their logic and reason. If you start to talk about things like alien spacecraft buzzing over your Air Force base, I guarantee you people aren't going to take you seriously unless something really happens. So I think there is something to this. So,
right.
So if you have a look at that craft there, okay, what that looks like, this is a representation. Obviously, it's not a picture of the thing, but we're going to go to the next thing here. And this is called the Bell, or Die Glock. Have you heard of this one?
No, I've never heard of that one.
Okay, so this is the Nazis built this thing they called the Bell or Die Glock. And it moved around in Germany. This was a super secret project that they had. It was so secret. It was one of those compartmentalized projects that no one knew about, much like the not the Philadelphia experiment, the where they developed the nuclear bomb, the H bomb. What was it called? The
Manhattan Project.
The Manhattan Project. The same kind of secrecy. So you had people working in the same base that had no idea that this was going on. Now this Die Glock, there's a lot of information about it. There's a guy who did a book about it. There's been many books written about it. Apparently, it was 9 feet wide and 12 to 15 feet high. Now, what this craft was said to be capable of was generating electricity from 0 point, from the ether, and it was capable of anti-gravity flying. So it was anti-gravity. And this thing was moved around Germany for different bases and hidden, and it was apparently the pride of the Nazis. And the very, very strange thing about the Nazis, when during the Second World War, they were looking for esoteric, deep knowledge of ancient knowledge. That's why they were going to places like Africa and North Africa to try and glean knowledge from ancient sites. And from all the conspiracy sort of ideas and the concepts come from the fact that the Nazis were involved in such a broad spectrum of trying to gather knowledge that they put it all into these projects of the anti-gravity. And then after the Second World War, that knowledge wasn't actually lost. It was actually transferred to a different place. And the speculation that that was actually Antarctica. And the speculation as to why it was Antarctica was Admiral Byrd went to Antarctica after the Second World War with the largest non-wartime fleet, an operation called Operation High Jump. From reports of that operation, they lost ships and men in Antarctica during that mission. And there was reports that they were flying craft of no human origin came from Antarctica and shot the ships and shot things out of the sky. So very, very, very strange. But the Bell, this is one of those things that in the conspiracy community is one of those things that everybody talks about as far as technology that's beyond the capability of what we know about. The Nazis had it during World War II, and they didn't. The only problem was that they couldn't mount a weapon onto it because if, as you were saying before, with our knowledge of physics, where for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. So if you have let's say a gun mounted on an anti-gravity device, if you shoot a gun out the front, it's going to push the thing backwards. So they couldn't use it as a wartime machine because of that problem. That was my understanding of what I read about it anyway. So interesting. So if you look at the shape of this thing, it's, and there's other pictures of the Bell as well. And then we go back to this. There's some interesting crossovers. This is obviously 30 years later. This is in the 1944 kind of thing. So very, very odd. There's a lot of history and a lot of writings about the Bell or Die Glock. If you have a look at that, really, really strange. And if you think about if they had anti-gravity capabilities in 1944, I mean, geez, it's crazy. Where would we be now if this was the real thing? And that's where we're getting to in the next as we move forward. So as you said before, the Pentagon just declassified 3 UFOs videos taken by Navy pilots. I'll play this. It's only a minute long.
What drives me crazy about these videos, they're always of some little black or white blob.
Dots.
You never really see anything.
I know.
But that's just because these gun cameras, they're not Hollywood high definition 4K cameras. They're just meant to point to something and so you can kill it.
Yeah.
But it's frustrating that you really can't make out the details of it or get close up to it,
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It is frustrating. Oh, geez, I'm trying to get to this thing. It won't allow me to really do it now. I'll try and move this over a little bit. There we go. Okay, so this one here. Okay. So Roswell of Russia. Okay, that's the Nazi. This Philadelphia experiment as well. With the Bell, this is one of those pages where we're talking about, you've heard of the Philadelphia experiment, that the Bell was actually involved in a very similar experiment in the German side, whereas the Americans were using the Philadelphia experiment. So really interesting article. This is A Hunt for Zero Point, which is a book by Nick Cook, talking about zero point energy, which is what we're going to get to next. So if we go here, so what we've seen in all these kind of things, with back here, Rendlesham was a military base, military, Navy's declassifying videos, these are military. Now this one here, have a look at this. This was on a truck in the US. This was in California.
Looks like a stealth stealth prototype of some kind. Pretty cool looking.
Oh, hang on, I'm gonna slow it down. Hang on.
I'll take 2.
Sorry.
I said I'll have 2 of those.
Yeah, I know. So this was at a site in California. They were transporting it on a truck on public roads. Okay, so we've seen the military is declassifying stuff. We saw some other some video that the military declassified, taken from a Navy ship, where there was some craft flying along next to a Navy ship. And then, you know, so this is the thing. If we had the technology to build this kind of stuff, the military did, which I'm almost positive they do, then why would they transport it on a truck so that everybody could see it? Is the question I have. What do you think?
Well, I think, you know, you could get conspiratorial about it. You know, we want to prep the public for the imminent invasion or unveiling or whatever. Or it could just be a prototype drone, stealth drone they've come up with that, or even a piece of something that's going to go on another ship. It could be a covered or something. It could be anything innocuous that, obviously, if it were a piece of ultra super sexy, incomprehensible space technology, it would be classified top secret, and they wouldn't be parading it through some little town in California. So, you know, who knows? Well, it's one of those things where you can speculate into it.
Yeah. Well, the reason I say that is, with everything that we see going on now, especially with what China's doing, and, you know, China's, you know, getting a bit fluffy with Taiwan, and obviously Russia with, you know, they're trying to build up Russia with a war with Russia. If you had some kind of technology that no one knew about, the easiest way to put the fear of God into your enemy is to put it out there and say, well, this is what we've got, and you don't know anything about it. You know, that's what I would do. That's what I would do if I wanted to scare the hell out of my enemies. That's what I would do. Put it on a truck and drive it through town so that everybody's watching and going, oh my God, what do they have? So it could be a piece of propaganda. Who knows? I don't know, but it is very odd. So,
well, they should put a few of these on trucks and drive them around Ukraine for a while, you know?
Yep. Okay, so this is the reason I've focused on military and talking about technology that we don't know about. We all know, everybody knows, that the military has technology that we don't know about, because that's the nature of military, because they have technology that we don't know about for national security reasons. That's a fair call, right?
Sure.
Yep. Okay. So this is a patent that was it came out in 2019, I think, 2019. This is a patent. This is craft using inertial mass reduction device. So this, from my understanding, I've read through the patent. You can have a look through here, background, and it goes through the whole. What I'll do is I'll include these in the description box, and I'll also include them as a pinned comment, so people can read through it. People who have a better understanding of physics and quantum physics and theoretical physics. So yeah, that's all that there. Now this comes from a guy called Cesar Pace, from the Salvatore Cesar Pace, who is US Department of Navy. Sorry about that. US Department of Navy. This is a patent that was released by them for a craft using inertial mass reduction device. Now, from my understanding, it uses a couple of different gases, which is what this diagram is for here. It uses gases through different ports and something called red mercury. Now, red mercury, I'm going to read you out the description of what red mercury is. Red mercury is purportedly a substance of uncertain composition used in the creation of nuclear weapons, as well as other weapon systems. Because of its great secrecy surrounding development and manufacture of nuclear weapons, there is no proof of red mercury exists. except that it is named in some papers. So, but this apparently there's a couple of different gases that are used to be able to perform what it does. 4 non-fundamental forces which control matter and therefore control energy. The 4 non-forces are strong nuclear forces, weak nuclear forces, electromagnetic force, and gravitational force. In this hierarchy of forces, the electromagnetic force is perfectly positioned to be able to manipulate the other 3. The stationary electric charge gives rise to an electrostatic field, while a moving charge generates both an electric and magnetic field, hence the electromagnetic field. Additionally, an accelerating charge introduces electromagnetic radiation in the form of transverse waves, namely light. So it goes into the whole description of how this works. This is from the US Navy. This was released in 2019. And this is for a triangular the triangular craft that is anti-gravity. Yep. Okay, you with me? Hello. Yeah, we'll go back here, see if Michael. Oh, we've lost Michael here. We'll still keep recording. See if Michael comes back in. Sorry, people. I'll wait for Michael to come back in. He's having some problems with his internet, I think. We're going to be talking some interesting stuff here. This is okay, hang on a minute. Let's see if he's coming back in again. Okay. We'll just pause for a moment while we wait. Okay, so Michael's back. For some reason, the thing dropped out, but we've got him back again. So let's go back into the screen share again. Where are we? Here we are. Okay, so we were talking about the this patent, which was the flying craft. Oh, sorry, that was this one here, which is the flying craft. But in order for a craft to fly and maintain anti-gravity capabilities, it has to have a power source, right? That's fair. So
Absolutely.
So here we are. This is the power source. This is a plasma compression fusion device. Now, as an electrical engineer, or as an engineer, you might have a better understanding of how this works. So this is a normal torsion AC generator. Is that correct?
Looks different than anything I've. The aliens are jamming you.
The aliens are jamming. We're back. I don't know what's going on. We're having all sorts of problems with recording tonight. I'll go back to screen share. Okay, so this is the so we've seen AC torsion devices. So basically, AC is it creates an electrical current. It doesn't create an electrical current. Creates a torsion in the ether. This is my understanding. So correct me if I'm wrong, Michael. AC alternating current engines or alternating current devices create a torsion in the ether, which creates an electrical charge, which is then collected by the copper wire, and then that is the electrical charge that comes off it. So this is different in the setup. This is a plasma compression device, which includes a hollow duct and at least one pair of opposing counter-spinning dynamic fuses. The hollow duct includes a vacuum.
You should maybe try emptying your trash.
Yeah. Okay, we'll try this again. So it keeps cutting off. If it cuts off again, I'll try something else. But right, we'll go back to the screen share. Here we go. Okay, so this is the torsion device that it's saying. This is a completely different electrical generator from what we've seen before in electrical generating terms. It uses a different thing. Also, from the same guy, Salvador Pace, from the US Department of Navy. So we have a craft that is anti-gravity with a patent. We have an electricity generation device. Now this thing here, apparently this plasma compression fusion device, can spit out the same amount of electricity. I've been through all this as well. Can spit out the same amount of electricity that a nuclear power station does in a year and a day. Now, in order so this is the electricity generation. We have the craft that the electricity generation is going to, but you can't transfer that kind of energy over to a craft without something like a room temperature superconductor. So you have to be able to transfer that power from point A to point B. So electricity generation to the vehicle that it's powering, you need a room temperature superconductor to transfer that power, which they also released as a patent in 2019. So we have, the military is saying, okay, we've got all these craft that we have seen buzzing around, and we're releasing energy, we're releasing footage of, and oh yeah, we've seen this thing in the sky. But yet at the same time, the Navy has these patents of these things that apparently there's one in particular that the patent has lapsed. I think it's the electricity generation device that the patent has lapsed, which means they've let it go. So if they've let that one go, then maybe they've got something better. And it seems strange to me that we release these patents onto the world. Maybe that's part of the psychological operation as well, just to say, hey, look at what we can do. So have you seen anything like this before? Oops.
No, and they didn't teach this in engineering school when I was in college. So this is out there crazy stuff. And I'll tell you what, if this is legit, if this technology actually exists, and then it kind of makes me, I'm very annoyed. I'm going to put my NASA hat back on, literally, figuratively here, and say if they can do anti-gravity, and if they have 0-point energy, they need to share it. I mean, NASA is still flying solar arrays and using chemical rockets to get off the planet. If they had something as sophisticated as anti-gravity and the kind of 0-point energy you're talking about, and they're not giving it even to an internal agency in the United States like NASA, then what the heck are they doing with it? That would be very, very annoying that they won't put it out and let it benefit the race, and help benefit the human race a little bit.
Absolutely. I agree with
you.
But
what do I know?
This is the thing. Like this, as I say, this one here is abandoned. You can see the status is abandoned on the bottom here. Now, the thing that annoys me as well, and I think we can all agree that we have a stranglehold on our technology is based around who runs the world at the moment. I mean, I've done a video about it with the oil companies control how we produce our electricity. So I think there's strong forces that work against things like this coming out and allowing us to experience a better world, because money talks. Unfortunately, it's an unfortunate set of circumstance. But that said, we have a group of people. There's a guy called Dr. Stephen Greer. Have you heard of Dr. Stephen Greer?
No, I haven't.
Okay, Dr. Stephen Greer, he ran a project in the US. He is a medical doctor, but what he did was he went and got professionals from different backgrounds, different walks of life, and interviewed them about their knowledge of these kind of programs, like at Area 51 and Skunk Works and all these kind of things that we don't know anything about. He wanted to bring this to the world and disclosure. So it's called the Disclosure Project. And so Dr. Stephen Greer runs this thing called the Disclosure Project. There's all sorts of stories about whether he's legit or whether he's just another controlled opposition or not. But what he did was he went to Congress and he had all these people testify before Congress about what they've seen and what they knew with evidence. And Congress basically just said, no, we're not disclosing it. So on this site here, the Disclosure Project, so you've got this witness here, Sergeant Carl Wolf, Langley Air Force Base, Tactical Air Command, what he's seen. That one's not there, but then there's plenty of witnesses that describe their encounter with either, and these people are highly decorated military personnel. They are not flight attendants. What do you call them? Tower, the tower people that control the planes through the towers. Having seen
flight controllers.
Flight controllers, yep. From military to
air traffic controllers.
Air traffic controllers, civilian and military, and all these people testified before Congress, not only in the US but also in Canada. So the Disclosure Project and Disclosure Institute, and it is history evidence. They've got evidence, the documentation from different government agencies. It's crazy the amount of evidence these guys have put together. And this is, yeah, like I say, there's people all around the world. They have UFO conferences constantly, and we're all told that they're all crazy, of course. Okay, there we go. But you have these people that are in these high-ranking positions that are sharing their stories that are compelling. So it's really, really strange. And I mean, as I say, I know how I'm seen in the world. Full-blown conspiracy theorist questions everything. I understand. But then when you see things like we've seen tonight, pictures and images, obviously the images are always grainy and blurry, and but to see that there are patterns that exist, that the US Navy, who is now releasing information that yes, maybe there are things that are flying around and we don't know what they are. If they have this kind of technology, maybe there are some military things that are flying around. Obviously, there could be, extraterrestrial things as well, possibly. Who knows? But maybe I would assume that some of it's military. If this technology that we've seen the patterns for if there's a possibility of it.
Well, if it's military and not extraterrestrial, then why aren't they using it? I mean, it's not doing anybody good. It's not doing anybody any good flying around the deserts of Nevada. I mean, they need to put it to use, and maybe they do, and they just don't tell us about the details.
Yeah.
Or maybe I have no idea. This is not something we can speculate all day, but you don't really know. And the other thing is maybe these patents. You look at a patent for an anti-gravity thing. Well, maybe it needs it's perfectly functional. You don't know. Some of the patents, somebody can have a brilliant idea and they can file a patent on the idea, but when it comes down to actually implementing it in the real world, it's either not economically feasible or there's a flaw in the theory and you can't actually engineer it. And, you can draw I could probably draw you a picture of a warp core, but it doesn't mean that I can build one or anybody else. So there's all kinds of possibilities about what it could be. And if it exists and if it works, then, what the heck? Show me the meat. Where are you using it?
So,
and I can understand why some things need to be classified, but when you look at the wars that we've fought lately, I don't see any evidence that we're using, anything alien-esque in any of these battles. It's all fighter jets and drones and missiles. It's not laser beams from anti-gravity UFOs.
Well,
if we had those, we should probably use them.
That said, I agree that it does seem like why would we have the technology and never use it? But here's the thing: you remember a few years ago when they had those California wildfires, and there was a place called Paradise in California that burned down really badly. You remember that place?
Yeah.
And then you saw there was houses all the houses were gone, but there were trees that were still standing, but there was cars that were melted on the road. Like the metal was melted. But then you had trees that were still standing. There was nothing happened to the trees. Really, really odd things. We've heard stories of direct energy weapons that we've heard many stories about for many, many years. Obviously Ronald Reagan was talking about Star Wars program, putting weapons in space, lasers in space. I do apologize, folks. We've had lots of issues with the recording tonight, so it's lots of stops and starts. But what we're getting to was if we do have this technology, if we do, and it is an if, because I've never seen it, I don't know, you don't know, you've never seen it either. We should all be sharing it so that we can move forward. But as you say, the problem is these the national security issues that we constantly coming up against is that the militaries have technology that we don't have, and that NASA could use. I mean, if it is a technology that could service us, then why isn't it being used? That's a fair question. Now that always brings us back to politics and money. Politics and money, and we have our money that we pay in our taxes. You've paid all your life, I've paid all my life, that goes to the government, that are public servants, that we never know what happens to the money. especially when it goes into the military budget. The black ops projects are just, it's like a sponge, it just mops up money. So, I think as we move through this transition period of, of what's happening in the world with our governments being questioned and being taken to task as it's happening all over the world right now, I think that should be one of the key arguments that we should have, is that if we do have technology that is being held by the military in different countries or by government agencies that are not military, for instance, that should be released. I think that's part of the pressure that we should be putting on. So as we come out of this, the financial woes that we're going to go into and all the rest of the nonsense that we're living through, we should also put the pressure onto our governments to release the technology and any information that they have about these technologies so that we can better work rather than constantly relying on these old technologies like steam, like nuclear power stations. And it's a steam engine essentially. It's crazy.
It is exactly a steam engine.
Yeah. But we're told that's going to save the world, the steam engine.
Steam turbine.
Yeah, we've had steam engines for more than 100 years, and here we are still talking about steam engines and nuclear power stations. But it's crazy.
Yeah, but these aren't your father's steam engines, though. They have gotten better.
Yeah, a little
it's
bit
like
more
internal combustion. It's like internal combustion engines. The only attitude about all this thing, whether it's alien technology or whether it's super secret military stuff or whatever, is, I could boil my attitude down to this: what have you done for me lately? And if it's aliens, it's like, well, okay, great. So you're zipping around our skies, until you actually do something that benefits me. What are you wasting my time for? Why don't you take me for a ride into orbit, or why don't you share anti-gravity technology? Why don't you share faster than light propulsion systems? Why don't you do something useful for a change instead of just buzzing around the skies? And that's true whether you're some super secret part of the Department of Defense or whether you're some alien from the Dagobah system. I don't care. What have you done for me lately? Get off your butt and do something useful for a change. That's my message.
Yeah.
And until they do, it's sort of like we can speculate all day, but at the end of the day, somebody needs to step up and do something useful for the world.
Absolutely.
Until they do, it's all just kind of Star Wars. It's amusing, but it's not useful.
No, absolutely. But this takes us into when we're talking about faster than light travel. And, I read lots of things about quantum physics and physics. Obviously I'm not, that's not my area of expertise, and I don't know the math, but I know the concept and the idea behind physics and quantum physics. So when you get to the quantum and you start talking about theoretical physics in quantum physics, then it gets really weird, because we've been told that one particle can't exist in two places at the same time, but in quantum physics it can. And then we've also been told in physics that there's faster than light travel is impossible, but then the information is being shared faster than light. It's instantaneous. There's no time lag between information being shared with one particle to another particle that's miles away. So it's when you get into the quantum physics side, it gets really weird. So when we go down that road about, the only way that we can't travel faster than the speed of light, because it would take an infinite amount of energy because of the way that it works. If we start thinking in terms of the physics and the quantum physics that we understand, as you say, the physics, we have to change the way that we think about, physics. Because if for instance, I did a video a little while ago talking about the D-wave computers, quantum computing, right? Mm-hmm. And with quantum computing, they're actually opening an interdimensional doorway and drawing power from multiple different dimensions to power the computer. I mean, it is so weird. It's unbelievable, So if we're able to open an interdimensional doorway, and the problem that we currently have is that we, in our dimension, that we can't, as far as we know, we can't travel from point A to point B 300 light years away, because we can't travel that fast because our physics says that we can't. But if we were to, we're talking about wormholes and things like that, but if you were to travel through a dimensional doorway, that was open at one end and open at another end in two different points in space, you could actually go from those two different points, but you don't have to travel the distance between them because the space in between them is folded so that those two places are in the same place. So
yeah,
no
it's easy
travel.
it's easy to conceptualize it. You know, it's very easy to conceptualize it theoretically. It's like, you know, if you've ever seen Stargate, that's what they had, right?
Exactly.
They had those Stargates. Did you ever see Stargate? That show?
Of course.
You know, that's what they did. You know, they did. And it's cool. You can imagine it. But you know, if it's ever going to become real, if it's going to go from a TV show or a movie to reality, it's going to happen because we have some really profound breakthrough in physics. And that breakthrough is going to happen someplace like CERN, you know, someplace where they're splitting atoms and discovering new subparticles, and they're understanding what's happening at that subatomic particle physics level. You know, physics doesn't really understand gravity.
No.
The force of gravity.
No.
Exactly what is it? You know, we have equations that can predict where things will go in a gravity field and all that, but nobody knows what is it. You know, that is my hope, that eventually somebody at some super collider, you know, particle physics research facility is finally going to make some sort of a discovery or breakthrough that may open the door to taking it from a discovery in physics to engineering that physics into something we can actually use to do something like repel gravity and or travel faster than light. But it's going to happen on a research institute or at a particle accelerator somewhere. It isn't going to happen because somebody discovers a blueprint from the 1940s, you know. I think it's going to happen, you know, because we just keep advancing in our understanding of physics. It's out there on the frontier somewhere.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I've got a question for you. You know, you're an engineer. You know, so. Yeah, I was talking with, you know, with what we're currently living through, the thing that we're not allowed to talk about, right? So, yeah, we're talking about science, you know, and there was a lady I spoke to, and she said, well, there's a consensus, all the scientists agree. And I said, well, actually, they don't. All the scientists we see on TV agree, but just because there's a consensus doesn't make it right, right? So, you know, and I said to her, here's the thing. Right. If you look at the way that science changes, it's not the people that all think the same that change the science. It's someone who's so far outside the thinking of how everybody else thinks, the thinking that we all know works. It's always someone that comes from somewhere really outside, like Nikola Tesla, or someone outside of the field that comes up with the technology that makes the consensus change. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
I mean, you've got to think outside the box if you want to discover something new. Everything we know is quote unquote in the box. Yeah. So if you want to discover something new, you've got to be willing to go out of the box, and you have to be willing to be told you're a bit of a nut job in the process of it. I mean, history is littered with people who said, if a man would fly, he would have wings, you know, or you can't fly faster than the speed of sound ever, you know, or the internet, or personal computers. Computing technology will never be useful to the common man. You know, the history is littered with people who were really deep inside the box and couldn't see outside the box. And so, yeah, I mean, by definition, anybody talking about anti-gravity and faster than light travel or zero-point energy today is going to be looked at as, you know, kind of like a wacky guy. And with respect to this thing that we can't talk about now, yeah, don't even get me started on that. Anybody who says all the scientists agree isn't paying attention. I mean, I've seen a dozen videos from highly accomplished people in microbiology, immunology, medical doctors, and, you know, who are completely in disagreement with what you see coming out of these knuckleheads on TV working for the national public health people, you know.
Yeah.
So don't tell me that the science is set on that.
No.
That's crap.
Yeah, well, that's
true.
that saying in particular, that saying the science is settled. As soon as someone says that to me, I say, well, you obviously don't know what science is, because the science is never settled. We have
Right.
working theories, and they work, which is great, but they work for now. That doesn't mean they're not open to change. Just because it's a working model and a working theory, it doesn't mean it's settled by any stretch of the imagination. You know.
No, exactly right. Exactly. It's only settled for as long as the data sets keep coming in compliance with the theory.
Yeah.
But the minute you can get a data set that's repeatable, that colors outside the lines, then you've got to rethink the theory. And that's the nature of science. So you're absolutely right about that.
Well, to do then, the reason I brought that up, now there's a guy in Canada. This videos from the 80s and 90s. There's a guy called Hutchison, Dr. Hutchison, who basically he had a wide array of different equipment that he had, scientific equipment that he bought secondhand, and set it all up in his garage at his house. Okay. And he demonstrated in the videos of it, he lots of interviews with television, and he demonstrates he can make anything anti-gravity. He can make anything float, including bowling balls, right? And you can look at the videos, and people have gone there to try and debunk it. It's amazing. And this is just some guy working from his shed at his house. Obviously a brilliant man, genius. But this is what I mean. And when we have the problem with our thinking now, on this plane of existence, this reality that we experience, is that we're trying to make decisions from our current technology. So we say, okay, well, we can't solve that problem with our current technology. We can't solve global warming or whatever they want to call it nowadays with our current technology. And the only way that we're going to be able to turn things around is to switch off all technology and go backwards to the Middle Ages so that we can save the planet. Not thinking that people are already working on ideas and concepts that will benefit us all. It's this thinking that nothing's going to change. There's going to be no new technologies. There's going to be no new discoveries. It's a really, really shallow way of thinking, to think that there aren't people working on problems, that problem can be solved at any moment. It's just a real sort of short-term thinking that the world's problems, and they'll never be solved with our current technology. So we don't have any technology to fix it. So what do we do?
That's a really stupid idea. I mean, let's apply that to dentistry. What are you going to do? You're going to say, well, since dentistry can't make us all have perfect teeth, let's just stop filling cavities and putting on crowns and go back to the days when our teeth all fell out when we were 25, and until somebody comes up with some other way to help our teeth get better, And that guy who knocked your tooth out in that barroom brawl you were in, that's a whole other problem.
There wasn't even someone knocked my tooth out in a barroom brawl. I wish it was. I'd have a good story to tell. It's just, I bit into a plum, it broke my tooth, it fell out. It's shocking.
That hurts.
No, this broke about 15 years ago, and I've got a tooth that goes in there, but I've got to get to the dentist. But obviously I'm poisoned, so I can't go. But anyway. But Michael, that covers basically everything I wanted to go through today. I'm hoping that I can stitch all these pieces together, hopefully, and make something that makes sense of what we've done today. But thank you for coming on to talk with me about this. I mean, it's such a huge subject, and you could go in multiple different directions. But I think we've seen tonight. We've seen the possibility that there's extraterrestrial life in our solar system, or not in our solar system, in our galaxy, and in the universe. There has to be something. And if we have got maybe advanced alien life forms living somewhere else in our galaxy or somewhere else in our universe, hopefully, maybe one day soon that we'll have a visit that changes the course of our world. Because at the moment, I'm not really liking the course of it. There's a lot of craziness happening. So fingers crossed. I'm hoping there's aliens come to visit us.
Well, right, and like there's two possibilities, about discovering the reality behind extraterrestrial life. One is they just show up, and if they, somebody is flying this technology around the skies that the fighter jets are taking pictures of, right? And those people, whoever they are, whether they're extraterrestrial or not, at some point, if they come out in the open, they go, here I am, here's what I've got, and here's what you can do with it. That's great.
Yeah.
And on a less dramatic option, the James Webb Space Telescope might start looking at planets like that TRAPPIST planet and discovering, holy cow, these guys have air pollution caused by carbon emissions. There must be life on that planet, So we can find out that there's extraterrestrial life in exciting ways or in more mundane scientific ways. But I think sooner or later we will know more than we do today. That's for sure. So keep your eyes in the meantime on the James Webb Space Telescope results and see what that can spot in the next year or so. That'll be interesting to see. I believe it goes operational later in the spring, and then so we'll start collecting data from that, and we'll see what it's got to say about some of these planets that are out there.
Wow, fingers crossed. I mean, I live in hope that we do have some kind of visitation or an invasion or something. I've called it for the next sort of couple of weeks, so something's going to happen before the end of February. I think it's going to be a faux alien invasion, but we'll see. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? Who knows that? Who knew 2 years ago that would be where we are today? So we'll find out what happens. But thank you one and all for being here. Thank you, Michael, for coming back and having a talk with us. I really appreciate your time. As always, great to have you here, and your perspective on all this, the alien technology and rockets and all that kind of thing is invaluable, and I really appreciate it. So thank you for joining us again. I can't thank you enough. Thank you.
Oh, hey, anytime, Chris. It's always a pleasure talking with you.
Great. Now, everyone at home watching this, thank you one and all for joining us. I hope, fingers crossed, I can stitch all this together. If not, we're going to have to do this again. It's crazy, but thank you for joining me here today. As I say at the end of my videos, go out into the world, do good, be good. We can change the world with your thoughts, your actions, and your speech, and how we interact with each other. So please go out, make the world a better place by doing it. And thanks for being here. If you like what we're doing here, drop us a comment, drop us a like and a subscribe, and there's lots more to come. And hopefully Michael will come back and talk with us again someday about something else that's going on. Hopefully, maybe an alien invasion. Who knows? But thank you one and all for being here. Thank you, Michael, again, and join me again. And I look forward to speaking to you all soon. Thanks very much. I'll see you soon. Ciao for now.